You're watching ITV News Meridian.
Your headlines in the southeast.
Please help we have a children and family in a boat. Please help me, bro. Please.
Frantic calls for help as a migrant boat capsizes off Kent. 4 people dead, dozens of lives saved by the heroic crew of a fishing boat.
Amazingly, he got right in next to the sinking boat and managed to come alongside and safely get 31 people on board.
RNLI volunteers the Coast Guard. The search and rescue that ends in tragedy a day after Parliament's new measures on migration.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour.
Also this Wednesday evening, 3 people are in hospital tonight after a car crashes into a cafe in Seaford.
And you know these women. An appeal as pickpockets steal hundreds from an 82-year-old woman in a charity shop in Horsham. Good evening. 4 people are dead and 43 others have been rescued after a dinghy carrying migrants began sinking into the icy waters of the English Channel in the early hours of this morning.
Well, this latest loss of life happened just a day after the Prime Minister announced new measures to try to dissuade people from making the dangerous crossing. Tonight, our reporters are live in Dover, in Dungeness, at the William Harvey Hospital in Ashford. And we're also in Westminster as questions continue about what to do to stop the traffickers and their victims.
First, though, our report from Kit Bradshaw on how the day unfolded. Viewers may find some parts of Kit's report distressing.
At 3 a.m, a desperate scramble for survival. Some 15 miles from the Kent coast, 15 miles from safety, this crowded dinghy is sinking, right in the middle of the English Channel. One of the many phone calls for help was recorded by a French charity.
Please help me, bro. Please. We are in the water. We have a family.
So I got a phone call in the early hours of this morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, from the skipper of the scallop fishing vessel, the Arcturus, a rigid inflatable boat with people on board, migrants, was crossing and was sinking very, very near to where he was fishing.
Some are pulled from their stricken boat, others plucked from the icy water.
So, amazingly, he got right in next to the sinking boat and managed to come alongside and safely get people on board. It looks to be the bottom of the rigid inflatable boat with the migrants on, 45 in total, I do believe, had fallen away. So you had all these people in the water, cold conditions, they were still holding on to the boat.
On land, temperatures barely got above freezing last night. The sea must have been unbearably cold. British and French rescue helicopters helped winch casualties to safety. This was a major international rescue operation. At daybreak, as the scale of what had happened became clear, emergency vehicles assembled at Dover's lifeboat station. While the wounded were taken to hospital, the bodies of those who didn't make it were brought ashore with as much dignity as possible. More than 44,000 people have arrived in the UK by small boat this year. While the crossings have become routine, losses of life are still rare. The Dover MP Natalie Elphick says her thoughts and prayers are with all those involved.
Well, I think a number of measures have been brought forward to try and deal with the issue, but the bottom line is the boats are leaving from France and we've got to make sure that they get stopped on the French beaches before they get put in the water. I mean, these are incredibly dangerous, treacherous wintry conditions. There is a risk of life, and sadly today we've seen that happen with many lives lost in the Channel.
He's a really professional, fantastic skipper. And his training obviously kicked in, and the crew, where they train man overboard recovery and emergency situations, and they were right in the thick of it, and they've just been fantastic. We're very proud of them. You know, a horrific incident really, and to get 31 of them aboard safely, alive, I think is a really good result.
For much of the day, large parts of the port of Dover have remained cordoned off, with tents assembled on the dockside. 24 hours after the Prime Minister vowed to stop the small boat crossings, they continue, and with devastating consequences.
Let's cross to Kit now, who remains in Dover this evening. Kit, some difficult scenes there today for everyone involved in this rescue operation.
Yes, and there remains a big emergency services presence here in Dover tonight. Earlier, when that lifeboat came back and docked here at the lifeboat station and one of the victims' bodies was brought ashore, a real stark and very emotional reminder of the human cost involved in all of this. I'm joined now here in Dover by Kay Marsh from a migrant support charity, Samfire. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. When the people smugglers are willing to put people in boats in the middle of the night at freezing temperatures, despite the risks, how can this be stopped, do you think?
Well, although the people smugglers are, of course, one element of the situation, it's important to recognise the fact that we need safe legal routes to asylum in the UK. You know, currently the mechanisms we do have are so narrow that the average person couldn't hope to be offered sanctuary. The PM touched on it very briefly in his statement yesterday, that new safe legal routes will be opened, but with no concrete plans. We need to know what those safe legal routes are going to be, because that is the only way we break this business model of the people smugglers and we stop the small boats.
And of course we don't know the exact personal circumstances of the people involved in this case, but you talk about safe and legal routes. So from the people you support as part of your charity's work, is it the fact that people in northern France and other parts of Europe who want to claim asylum here, there's very limited options for them to do that legally?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Suella Braverman was questioned about it very recently and floundered because she couldn't answer the question, because for the majority of people there are no safe legal routes. You have to be on British soil in order to make your claim for asylum, and this is what drives the small boat crossings, the irregular crossings, and unfortunately tragic incidents like today. If we give people the option to make their claim for asylum at an embassy or before needing to get in the water, that is how we stop the small boat crossings.
OK, Kay Marsh from Samfire, thank you very much for joining us. And it is a search and rescue operation continuing this evening. It's thought that the Coast Guard have told us that their operations are continuing, and it's thought that they are continuing to search for missing people in the Channel tonight.
For now, Kit, thank you.
Well, as Kit mentioned a few minutes ago, the scale of this morning's operation was vast. Although the focus of today's rescue with paramedics and ambulances has been at Dover, the emergency response was spread across a much wider area. Let's just recap on what happened from early this morning. The RNLI lifeboats were launched from Dover at 3:07 a.m, followed by vessels from Dungeness, from Ramsgate and from Hastings. The Royal Navy, the French Navy and the Coast Guard, with teams from Deal, Dungeness and Folkestone, were also part of the rescue operation, along with helicopters from Lydd and from Leon Solent in Hampshire. An air ambulance was also sent, and then there was that fishing vessel that we mentioned earlier on that was already in the Channel and one of the first at the scene as the crew made frantic efforts to save people from the icy water. Sangeeta.
Thanks, Matt. Well, we can cross now live to Tom Savides, who is in Dungeness for us tonight. Tom, it seems that the boat was heading for that stretch of coast.
Yes, that's the information we have. We've been told that that small boat was heading to Dungeness, not too far from the lifeboat station. Now, if you just look behind me at the moment, you can see the Dungeness lifeboat returning to its base. We understand that that boat was one of those that was dispatched this morning to help in that rescue operation. Now, the alarm was raised in the early hours of this morning in conditions not too dissimilar to what we have this evening. Freezing, treacherous conditions in the English Channel in pitch darkness. So you can imagine just how scary it must have been for all those involved and all those on that boat. Now, in the past, boats have been arriving all along the southeast coast, all the way from Dover in Kent right down to Shoreham in Sussex. But it is a very large area to patrol and to carry out search and rescue operations. And also on the French side, where boats are departing along a 60-mile stretch. Unfortunately, this latest incident off the Kent coast is unlikely to be the last.
Tom, thank you.
Well, 2 casualties rescued from the sinking boat were taken to the William Harvey Hospital in Ashford, one by air ambulance. Joe Caution is live there for us this evening. Joe, what do we know about casualties tonight and where those rescued are now?
Well, Matt, information is still developing here in Ashford tonight. What we know so far is these Kent hospitals were put on alert, on standby in the early hours of this morning, ready to receive a number of people caught up in that serious incident off the Kent coast. They were stood down, though, at 9 o'clock this morning. We've heard about those 4 fatalities already. One of those people who lost their life actually lost their life while en route in the air ambulance, while en route to the William Harvey Hospital here in Ashford. They were pronounced dead on arrival. Another person brought here by a rapid response unit by road for they were brought here for treatment. We understand that they are likely to be discharged today if they haven't already while we've been on air. Now, of the 40 or so others, we have also learnt that none of them were taken to East Kent hospitals. Now, of course, that would have been their nearest port of call for treatment. That doesn't mean to say that they weren't taken elsewhere. With serious incidents like this, we sometimes see people airlifted to London hospitals for more specialist support. It's unclear at this stage if anyone was taken elsewhere to other hospitals. The RNLI has issued warnings in the past about the dangers of being in water that cold for even just a number of seconds, because the body can go into shock and it puts you at greater risk of drowning. But it just shows you, even in conditions as dangerous as this, it shows just how desperate people are to even make that perilous crossing.
OK, Joe Caution in Ashford, thank you very much.
Well, let's go live to Westminster now and speak to James Dunham. James, the tragic deaths in the Channel happened less than 24 hours after a big government announcement yesterday on tackling asylum claims and these crossings.
We have to stop the boats. That's what Rishi Sunak declared yesterday, Sangeeta, as he personally announced this new immigration policy, emphasising the need for urgent and decisive action before things get worse. Well, the situation has got much worse, and Prime Minister's questions this lunchtime was led with an acknowledgement of this catastrophic loss of life.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the whole House will share my sorrow at the capsizing of a small boat in the Channel in the early hours of this morning and the tragic loss of human life. Our hearts go out to all those affected and our tributes to those involved in the extensive rescue operation.
Our prayers go out to those who capsized in the freezing waters of the Channel last night. It's a reminder that the criminal gangs running those routes put the lives of the desperate at risk and profit from their misery. They must be broken up and brought to justice.
These are the days that we dread. Crossing the Channel in unseaworthy vessels is a lethally dangerous endeavour. It is for this reason, above all, that we are working so hard to destroy the business model of the people smugglers, evil, organised criminals who treat human beings as cargo.
The Home Secretary there putting a firm finger of blame on the people smugglers. Tonight, in the last hour, the PCS union, which represents Border Force staff, has called for her to resign. Let's talk now to Sir Roger Gale, the Conservative MP for North Thanet. Are you in agreement with the PCS union? Should the Home Secretary go over this absolutely horrific tragedy?
I'm not interested in playing their kind of union politics over this. This is far too serious for that. It is a absolutely devastating event. It's claimed the lives of 4 people. A lot of other people are quite clearly ill. There were 4 children on board this boat, we understand. And the Prime Minister is absolutely right to lay the blame where it should lie, which is with the people smugglers. This is an evil traffic, and we have to stamp it out.
So no responsibility lies with the government here at all?
Well, the government obviously has the responsibility for policy, and that's what the Prime Minister outlined yesterday. I'm delighted with the initiatives that he's taken. First of all, to meet with Monsieur Macron and try and do a deal with the French. Second, to meet with the Albanian Prime Minister. There's a lot of good in the announcement that was made yesterday. But that's long term. Short term, we have got to get to grips with the people who are responsible. And those are the traffickers, people who are dealing in what I described as floating death in the House of Commons. Because that's what it is. They don't care about people's lives.
The Home Secretary, I think, today said that around 50 people smuggling gangs have been brought to justice in the last year. Last month, of course, she was in France signing that agreement with the French to increase funding for more patrols on their coastline. Is there any sense that that is making any tangible difference here to this situation?
I think it will make a difference. That response, by the way, was in reply to the question that I asked her. And I'm glad that we are, at least now, beginning to get to grips with this. A lot could have been and should have been done earlier. Let's be absolutely clear about that. And I have my own quarrels with the Rwanda policy, which I don't believe is a deterrent or will work. What we need is a pan-European solution that bridges not just the European Union, but the wider Europe. This is an international problem. It has to be solved at an international level. And it's a human problem that has to be solved at a human level. But it has to be done as quickly as we possibly can, because otherwise we're going to get more events like the one that tragically we witnessed last night.
Do you think other European leaders are shirking responsibility over this tragedy and thinking, well, these migrants will just end up in Britain?
The Calais group, as it's called, has met again recently, and that's a step in the right direction. But this goes much broader than the northern European states. This involves Greece, this involves Italy, this involves Turkey. And unless and until we get a quota system in place, approved by the United Nations Council on Refugees, and unless they decide who is going to come, and we stick to that, we're not going to solve the problem. But that doesn't gainsay the fact that we need to crush, and I mean crush, the people who are dealing in this traffic.
So Roger Gale, thank you very much. Well, look, governments now and governments past have vowed to get on top of this problem. This situation, this horrific situation, will bring the whole tragedy of people smuggling back into the light, and we'll see if there are any real differences made as we head through the rest of this year and into next.
We will. James, thank you.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30, and more, of course, on the deaths in the Channel today. To look ahead to that programme tonight, here's Lucrezia Mellarini.
A major rescue operation after 4 people died trying to cross the English Channel. More than 30 others were pulled alive from the freezing water after calling for help when their boat got into trouble in the early hours of this morning. Also ahead, the government is urged to negotiate with nurses on the eve of the first ever nationwide strike. And can Morocco make history again as they take on France in their World Cup semi-final? Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
You are watching ITV News Meridian here in the southeast. Coming up soon, we'll be live with the car that crashed into a shop in Seaford, and we'll have more on the cold snap and your weather forecast with Philippa Drew.
Also on tonight's programme, a Sussex police appeal. Do you know these women? Officers want to speak to them after pickpockets targeted an 82-year-old woman in a charity shop.
And remember, you can find more on today's top stories by heading to our website at itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can follow us. That's on Facebook, Twitter and on Instagram. Three people have been injured after a car crashed into the front of a cafe. It happened early this afternoon in Seaford.
Let's go live now to Malcolm Shaw for the latest. And Malcolm, the injured taken to hospital today?
Yes, that's right, Matt. The cafe remains sealed off tonight. The front of the building open to the elements. Some barriers have just been put into place, but behind those there's smashed glass and other debris scattered across the pavement. Harry Nat's is a well-known coffee shop here in the centre of Seaford, standing at the junction of Broad Street and Sutton Road. It was here at around 12:30 today that a vehicle crashed into the front of the cafe. That was a Volvo XC90, an SUV, a four-wheel drive vehicle, quite a large vehicle. The emergency services were called, police, ambulance and fire. East Sussex Fire and Rescue say that they had 5 appliances here in fact, and crews released 3 casualties. One was the driver of the car, the other 2 were people who were not inside the car. Now paramedics took them to the Royal Sussex County Hospital for treatment for injuries including fractures. An investigation is now underway to try to establish how the car came to crash into the front of the cafe. Sussex Police are appealing for anyone who saw what happened or maybe has mobile phone footage of it to come forward.
OK, Malcolm, for now, thank you very much indeed. In other news, a drug dealer who ran a county line between Hastings and London has been jailed for more than 12 years. Abdi Rahim Elmi, who's 27, appeared in court on Monday. He was identified by police as being involved in a large-scale drug operation supplying multiple kilos of cocaine and heroin. Well, it was connected to the closure of a county drugs line in the Eastbourne area and a Hastings drugs line, where wholesale amounts of drugs were being supplied across Sussex.
A driver caught reversing on the M2 and another applying her makeup at the wheel were among those targeted during a road safety operation. Kent Police patrolled the motorway in an unmarked HGV cab between Monday and Friday last week and handed out 26 traffic offence reports. One driver was caught reversing up a slip lane after missing the junction for Gillingham.
A contraflow system along the M20 has been deployed overnight. Operation Brock was postponed due to the heavy snow, but has returned ahead of the Christmas period. The motorway reopened this morning with the traffic management scheme in place.
Community warm spaces have opened up across Ada and Worthing, giving people somewhere to keep warm for free this winter. The areas are designed to help those worried about rising energy bills while reducing social isolation.
New research has revealed a promising recovery for the White Cliffs of Dover's tourism industry. The value of the district's visitor economy saw an almost 80% growth from 2020 to 2021, rising to around £200 million, according to Visit Kent.
A grandmother from Sussex says she's been left nervous about going out after cash was stolen from her bag while she was in a charity shop.
Anne Hutchinson from Itchingfield near Horsham thinks she was followed from a bank where she'd taken out a substantial sum of money.
Police are now appealing for help and identifying 2 women who were in the shop at the time. Here's Nikki Woodcock.
As Anne Hutchinson approaches the till to pay for her shopping, 2 young women approach her. One appears to take an envelope from Anne's shoulder bag, while the other holds up clothing, seemingly to hide what's happening. It's over in a matter of seconds. But Anne later discovers that hundreds of pounds of cash are missing.
I feel I was targeted and followed down that street and, just happened to go into the charity shop.
It was so quick, wasn't it? Really?
It was.
After you'd
absolutely
withdrawn the money.
A matter of no more than 3 minutes, really, from the bank to the charity shop. That's all it was.
Mrs. Hutchinson had taken a substantial sum of cash out from this branch of Santander in South Street in Horsham. It was to buy Christmas presents for her grandchildren, among other things. It was hidden in an envelope and zipped into a pocket of her bag. She went into this cancer research charity shop in nearby East Street. Anne now believes the thieves watched her at the first location and followed her to the second. This morning at her home in Itchingfield, we showed Anne and her daughter the CCTV. It was the first time they'd seen it.
We understand they, from what the police have said, it's happening all around the local towns.
Yeah.
So it's a warning out there to everybody to be as vigilant as you can, and certainly every time I've been out since into the town, I'm far more conscious.
Yes, it's made me very nervous to go out even.
These are the 2 women who police want to speak to. They were in the charity shop at around 10:45 on Thursday the 1st of December. Nikki Woodcock, ITV News, Horsham.
Well, let's return now to our top story, the death of 4 people after a dinghy capsized in the Channel and the huge rescue operation to save dozens of people from the freezing cold water.
Well, we can go back to Kit Bradshaw, who's in Dover for us. Kit, still an ongoing emergency operation there this evening.
Yes, that's right, Sangeeta. I mean, a search and rescue operation that started at 3 a.m. this morning is still very much happening. Police cordons still in place at the road that approaches the lifeboat station. And we've seen emergency vehicles, just another police vehicle, a forensic investigation vehicle leaving there. And just before we came on air, I checked online vessel tracking information, and that shows still a number of vessels in the area where that dinghy capsized, including military vessels, border force vessels and a number of lifeboats, obviously searching that area for potentially missing people in that precise area. So very much still a live search and rescue operation, but we've also seen, sadly, private ambulances and forensic officers here in the port of Dover, in the tents that were erected around the lifeboat station, as part of the investigation, obviously, into this crime. And as we hear from ministers, we're hearing from James in Westminster, this is a crime and there are people smugglers involved, and there will be a police investigation that follows too.
And Kit, tens of thousands of people have made this dangerous crossing. Emergency teams on standby, of course, for more crossings. And this could sadly happen again.
Yes, and of course, this is not the first time, Sangeeta, that lives have been lost in the Channel. It was just 3 weeks ago in Folkestone that there was a vigil for a similar sinking in November 2021, in which 27 people died, including women and children, where their boat capsized. And each time this happens, politicians and others say, never again, we need to stop these small boat crossings, and yet here we are with another loss of life in the Channel. The Archbishop of Canterbury said today that the terrible event, as he described it, is another reminder that debates about asylum seekers are not just statistics, but precious human lives. 4 lives lost in this incident, and sources tell me that 3 people are still unaccounted for.
Kit Bradshaw, live in Dover. Thank you.
And we will have, of course, the latest on that story as we get it on our websites and on our late bulletin this evening. Now, before we go, let's get a check on the weather forecast for the hours ahead. With the details for us tonight, here's Philippa Drew.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. It's been another bitterly cold day out there today, and more of the same to come through tomorrow and Friday as well. But as we head into the weekend, signs of a pretty significant shift in conditions, turning increasingly unsettled, but with a big recovery in temperatures as well. So currently we're under the influence of very cold air coming down from the Arctic. But as we head through the next few days, you'll notice winds take a more southwesterly turn. That will introduce much milder air come Saturday and more especially Sunday. But that will also be accompanied by an area of low pressure, and this will bring us something a little more unsettled. But out there at the moment it remains pretty quiet, so staying largely dry overnight, some lengthy clear spells, another bitterly cold night, temperatures inland well below freezing, another widespread frost, ice on those car windscreens, and potentially a few stubborn fog patches as well. But the fog will gradually lift tomorrow morning, the frost taking its time though, and perhaps lingering in some inland areas all day. And I think even with dry and fine conditions, another bitterly cold day on the cards. Temperatures for many of us struggling to a very modest 2 or 3 Celsius at best. These are your times of high water for tomorrow. Then for Dover, they're 3 minutes past 3 in the morning, 24 minutes past 3 in the afternoon. So that cold but bright weather continuing into Thursday and Friday. But as we head through the weekend, that's sign of a change. So increasing cloud from the southwest, low pressure introduces an area of rain. But as the rain hits the cold air, there's just a chance we could see another brief spell of sleet or snow. Thankfully, it shouldn't cause too many problems, and temperatures will really creep up the scale thereafter. Bye-bye.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
And do stay with us, because in just a moment the ITV Evening News continues here with Lucrezia Millarini with more on the migrant tragedy.
For now, though, that is it from us for this evening. As we say, for the very latest, you can go to our website, itv.com/Meridian, or check out our social media feeds as well. Sangeeta's back with the late news just after 10:30, but from us for now, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.